What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Spill the Beans. Today I'm sitting down with my buddy Andy Sallée. He's out of Iowa, owns about $90 million of commercial real estate, not apartments. So he actually owns a bunch of strip centers, retail, office buildings, medical buildings, and can offer a different perspective that we haven't really attacked on an episode of Spill the Beans yet. So I'm excited to sit down with him. He flew all the way in from Iowa just to hang out, sit down for an hour, and talk some shop and provide some value for you guys. So dial it in. Give me your best takeaway in the comments below, and if you would, like it, share the video after we're all done, and provide some value for other people too. So tune in. Appreciate you guys. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Spill the Beans. Got my buddy Andy Sallée here. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Awesome, man. Well, I know we had dinner last night, talked about a lot of good stuff that you have going on in business and in the real estate side of things. And dude, you're doing a little bit different of an asset class than what I do, right? You're doing more retail, more office, strip malls, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And structuring it a little bit differently too, right?
Correct.
So I want to kind of get into all that. Give me a little bit more about your backstory over the past 10, 15 years. You said you dabbled in real estate for a little bit, and then you got pretty serious a few years ago.
Yeah, so what had happened was I had invested in, mainly apartments. I started with a single family home, a duplex, a fourplex, a sixplex, a 35plex. But I started in 2003. But I dabbled in, it was really slow, really boring as a hobby. So I was never serious about it.
Because you had full-time other businesses, right?
Well, I was a salesman for a home improvement company. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad at the age of 28.
Yep.
And then I was like, shit, I don't make any money while I sleep. So, I was making good money. So, I bought, back then I bought gumball machines. I was trying to create passive income. But then I bought a single family house and then just more and more and more rolled over.
Yeah.
But for those first 10 years, I really just dabbled as a hobby. I was never serious. I didn't really know what wealth was. I didn't know what passive income was.
Yep.
So at 28, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was making good money, but I still had expenses. Like I bought my home, and it was a large mortgage payment. I'm 28 years old. I've 100%. Income was by if I sold a job. So I didn't sell, I didn't make any money. So I was like, I didn't want to lose anything, my toys. So I started just doing it as a hobby, just like I said, as a side, and then just escalated that up. So from 28 to about 38, all I did was apartments.
And what years are those?
So I'm 45, so
Yep.
I stopped doing apartments about 7 years ago.
Got it. Okay.
So 14-ish.
2014, 2015.
Yeah, 2014.
Okay.
So 2008 was my very first commercial strip mall.
Yeah.
And I bought it from my mentor, whose name is Tom Rudbeck, in my town. He was a very wealthy man. And he's like, you should consider, in my mid-30s, I had about 650 apartments. I did a lot of management myself. I oversaw the maintenance. When I first started, I managed up to 100 units. Beyond that, I had management people.
Yep.
Like, honestly, my best friend managed 300 of my apartments at one time. So we did it all internally. And then I was like, I'm going to try this commercial just because it's a cute, cool building, and I like it. It's the one I closed on all of myself. But anyway, I bought it originally. I went to about 13 different banks to get this. 12 banks said no, the 13th bank said yes. Commercial real estate is a different world. It's a different beast.
Yep.
Apartments were easier to finance because if you lose a $5,000 a month tenant, it's a big swing.
Yeah.
Apartments are nice diversification.
Yep.
But with 650 apartments, my wake-up call on that was, I had this complex I was trying to fix. It was a 70plex, and I bought it for almost $1 million below appraised value. I bought it out of bankruptcy from Bank of America. You knew all the entanglements buying bankruptcy deals.
Yep.
I was like, I got this, but this was a Class C, D, and it was scary. But in my head, my ego was big, and I thought I could turn it, right? And I started losing.
Dude, it's a lot of work, man, turning in war zones. It is a lot of work. There's a lot of, nonstop break-ins, nonstop tenant turnover, professional tenants who come in, they live there for 3 months. Like,
that's a good way to put it.
It looks good. Yeah, really. It looks good on paper, but those are never the best long-term holds. If you can buy it, renovate it, fill it up, and get the hell out of it as quickly as possible, you can make some money in the war zones.
Yeah.
But dude, I don't I don't want to risk being stuck with any of those properties because I have been before, and it's a nightmare long term.
And we could do an entire show just on those, dude.
Yeah,
Seriously.
exactly.
I had an apartment building burned down. I had where a 70-plex, I paid the entire utility bill, and all the windows were open because it was too high.
Yeah.
And I was losing tens and tens of thousands.
Yep.
I had a lady, I recited a building, a 4-plex, and I was excited, right? It's pretty, new roof, beautiful new windows, and then a lady pours grease from her pans out the windows, and it can hurt you a little bit.
Unreal.
My first complex was 2003. It was a 35-plex. It was $1.3 million. I put up about $300,000. I literally walked away from that closing with, how am I going to put gas in my car, right?
Yeah.
I was that tight. I was 28-ish.
Because the way that you've structured your deals is you're using your own cash for the down payments.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm here
and you build
to
out
learn from you.
A big portfolio. But you're at what, 90,000? Or I'm sorry, 90 million?
I'm about 88 million right now.
Yeah.
Today, I'll cross over the $100 million mark in March.
And you've never raised private money.
Yeah, I don't know that world. That's why, you said you could grab dinner. I cut a check. I'm like, I'll be here for an airplane ride, a hotel, whatever it may be. I'm going to pay for speed because I'm learning. But I always told myself, I really didn't want to accept anybody's money or get into partnerships because I've lost some money in some partnerships.
Yeah.
You're just not always aligned, right?
Yeah.
But I told myself I wouldn't do anything until I had 100 million in assets.
Yep.
So now I was like, that happened quicker than you think,
it does, right?
And I've never raised capital. Like what you do is awesome, but I always talk to my team about, like my banker does my financing. He talks another language. Like speaking of Javier, I love Javier. He probably speaks Spanish, right?
Yeah.
Right. I don't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Well, I don't speak bank. Like my banker has a 30-year business in banking.
Yep.
He owned a dozen properties, but he speaks underwriting language.
Yep.
He speaks bank language. Like a lot of times, I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yep.
Sorry.
You could say help.
Raising capital. Like you talk pref and you talk this, and that's above my pay grade. I don't know my legal terms or property management stuff because I kind of just know what I want to do and know what I want to accomplish.
Yep.
So, but that's why I got to learn. Like I'm trying to learn. The biggest thing in 2022 is if it's uncomfortable or scary, I try to run to it.
Yeah.
So like talking to you, it's a little scary, and even considering taking on a partner or considering taking money from somebody honestly scares the heck out of me. I like to take all of the wins, of course, because my ego and I'm greedy. But I know I'm taking all the losses too, but it makes me feel warm and fuzzy that if any goes right or wrong, it's on me. So, but I need to learn, like you keep saying, at dinner last night, go to 500 million. I'm like, that's so big.
Well, if it doesn't matter how much money you have, you will eventually
run out,
right? You're going to eventually run out of cash.
I bought $47 million last year alone.
Yeah.
It's easy to run out of that 25 and 30% down payment.
Yep.
The other thing I miss about apartments was when I was buying so many apartments, I could get the deal done with 20% down. Now my global cash flow is based on my debt service coverage ratio. My DSCR, I get it every month. But you're always going to be 25%, 30%. 35%. Like my brand new buildings I bought, a lot of them are 30+% down.
Yep.
Now I feel warm and fuzzy and better because my average leverage is I've got 62% leverage on my portfolio. So I've got some equity, so I can take the bumps and bruises and the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows. But commercial is definitely a different breed. But I 1031'd out all the apartments mainly because I had some complexes that needed, and this was big back then, but I needed a parking lot and a roof, two big issues, a 56-plex and a 70-plex. The 56-plex, the roof was $283,000. Well, you know what? Those tenants didn't pay that bill.
Yeah.
Those guys, can't believe they didn't do that. Because triple net commercial buildings, tenants pay that whole bill.
Yeah.
I don't see it, don't really bother me. The apartment complex needed a $200,000 parking lot. Well, they didn't give me more rent just because I got a new parking lot.
Yep.
So that's when I decided to transition into commercial. So it's a different phase.
So
let's talk about a little more risk.
Let's talk about the benefits and the downsides
There's
of
a lot of good
investing,
and
right?
bad.
Because I think every asset class has lots of benefits, and there's downsides to every asset class,
Absolutely.
right? So when you get into the commercial side of things, first of all, how are you sourcing these deals?
Okay, so my biggest thing is And I know it sounds cliche, but I'm in Iowa, I'm in small town. Mine is relationship.
Yeah.
90% of my deals never hit the market. 90% of my deals are
Through brokers or sellers
through brokers
or
and
bankers
sellers.
or
Through a lot of brokers and sellers. But in my town, the average income is $32,000 a year. The average house is $120,000 a year. So the economy is pretty, economically safe, right? So it's a good community to invest in. We have John Deere. We now have Amazon. We have Alcoa. We have government arsenal. We have some good, stable jobs. So that's warm and fuzzy. But to get the deals, mainly it's like every 9-figure guy in my town, I know them, and I have coffee with them, or I talk to them. Now, they don't tell me how they got where they're at.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my town is generational wealth, so that the best way is to inherit the money, not work for it like I'm doing.
Yeah.
But they're selling me deals because they know I can close, but they also have the confidence. As soon as I write an offer, we're closing. I mean, when you buy 14, 15 strip malls a year, you get a little bit of a resume and a reputation.
Sure.
But I also don't beat them up. It's not like if they got a $10 million asset, I'm going in and trying to buy it for 6 or 7. So a lot of that is I'm usually getting that asset for 90 cents on the dollar, which is a win-win for both sides because there's no broker involved.
So let's talk about underwriting. How do you underwrite a strip mall? How do you underwrite an office complex? I know you do some like medical and office type stuff too. Like, what's the difference in underwriting apartments to underwriting strip malls and that kind of stuff? Because obviously there's like
there's
common
a
area
caveat.
maintenance. There's on a
The
triple
CAM
net.
charges.
So explain what a triple net is, and explain what a triple net lease does, and who's responsible for everything.
Well, the benefits, so when you underwrite a deal, like an apartment complex, I just bought a 100-plex. There's so much fudge area. You know what I mean? Like a management fee, how much is repairs and maintenance, how much is gas and electric, how much is lawn care, how much is snow. There's so much fudge. And it's good and bad.
And you can make the numbers easily look better than they are.
Way better
look worse.
or way worse.
Yeah.
You can do both angles.
Yep.
And a lot of times in my 30s, when I had the 600 plus apartments, I thought I was better than I was.
Yep.
Or I thought I didn't know to a T where I was.
Yep.
So now my focus is I love medical buildings, hospitals, medical office spaces. I like the University of Iowa. They're a big tenant of mine. Trinity Medical, Genesis Medical, but also retail strip centers. But the benefit that I have, I do all triple net. So everything is built up at a tenant.
So like, whether it's an office or a retail space or a strip center, you're always doing triple net?
I'm doing 100% triple net. Do I buy a center sometimes and I get a couple that are not, and they're what are called gross leases? Of course, but you take the good with the bad.
Sure.
Like we live in Iowa, so if we have a crazy snowstorm and tens of thousands a month, and sometimes a lot larger than that snow, everybody's like, are you freaking? I'm like, no, it don't matter to me. Tenant pays it. Now we try to do the best for our tenants, get the taxes as low as possible, get the cleaning at the hospitals as low as possible.
The more money you save them, the stronger they are financially.
Right. A lot of
and you can be more competitive on your lease. Yeah.
Right. A lot of owners don't go the extra mile to go fight those taxes every year, renegotiate all my insurance. I only have 23 buildings and 18 locations, but that totals, like I said, about 90 million in assets.
Yep.
So it's not huge. I'm a small player. I'm not very big at all. But if I can negotiate leases, I can get my taxes down, my insurance down, my snow bill down, because I'm still the underdog, right?
Yep.
I'm the underdog. I'm the small guy. I'm just gonna, be able to perform. Well, he's got to get 18 bucks a foot to net whatever.
Yep.
I can do it for 16 foot and net my same.
Yep.
So we're just a little bit more conservative on a lot of things.
Yep.
But we've gone through the biggest business plan. I think COVID's been fantastic, and the pandemic has taught us what to do and what not to do.
So how has COVID? I mean, dude, you saw the riots, right? That happened right after COVID, and a lot of retail got windows busted in, businesses went out of business, right? COVID happens, and people can't transact because they're not going out into stores, and they're shopping on Amazon and through e-commerce instead of actually going to brick and mortar locations. Did that spook you at all? How did that play into the retail and the office side? And obviously office, right? People are working from home now. So how did all those different things adversely or positively affect your properties?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I was very fortunate, thank God, that a lot of my commercial centers, my team is much smarter than me. My guy, like I said, he was the president of a bank for 20 years. We analyzed every deal down to the penny and in worst case scenarios, and let's plan on it going 20% empty in the first year. Every deal we
Before you ever bought it.
Before we ever buy it.
Yeah.
So that's how we've analyzed every deal. The pandemic, we were maintaining 95% plus in collections and 95% plus in occupancy, but that's different. Like I'm buying my office spaces like with the hospitals. They're gonna pay me.
Yeah,
I have one tenant that pays me $100,000 a month. Like my Buffalo Wild Wings, your FedEx's, Atletico, Qdoba's, Moe's Taco Place. A lot of those places weren't really going anywhere. They were still cutting checks whether they're open or not. But there was some tenants that I had some local restaurants or that I would frequent that I try to go to all my businesses in my buildings.
Sure.
They had some struggles. The pandemic made it really hard for the mom and pop businesses.
Yeah.
So if you went into the pandemic, it's like going into 2008. 2008 was my best year in my career because everybody was over leveraged and undercapitalized. Pandemic hurt a lot of people. It was immensely profitable for me because I was not over leveraged and I was capitalized appropriately. Now cash flow on the commercial is a lot different. Your income can go up and down in big swings.
Right.
Like
because
I remember apartments,
you got one tenant who's paying you a third of all the rent, or and it's thousands, and it's not like an apartment where you can put it back on the market and fill it back up in 30 days.
No.
You got to list it with the broker. You got to go through the process of marketing it from 6, 12, 18 months.
Or longer.
Or longer. Of it sitting vacant. And then
you got to be able to carry that.
And you got to carry it. And then you got to pay the broker based on a 10-year lease term, which is a big check you got to write up front as soon as you lease it. And then there's typically some free rent or some sort of concessions that you give to the tenant for the build out. And then you finally start collecting rent, right? So it can be a long time. How do you underwrite for that?
Well, and a lot of that, so on the deals that I acquire now, I bought some deals when I was a little less experienced.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not even close to the same guy I was a year ago, and not even close to the guy 5 years ago. Like 7 years ago, I bought a building called Lincoln Healthcare, and it was about $6 million. I remember because it was a 25% down payment, but it was one tenant. It was $85,000 a month in rent and 7 years left on the lease. I should have never bought that deal. I mean,
Why?
I had a net worth of maybe 12 or 13 million dollars, let's say. I couldn't cover an $80,000 a month loss.
Yeah.
I mean, I was probably only making, maybe $1 million, $1.2 million a year, but you go to zero in a second, and still owe the taxes, you still owe all that. Now that was 2 years ago. That lease came up, and I mean, you're talking come to Jesus time, right? Mm-hmm. You make the $86,000 a month, or you make zero. Building's worth $9 million or worth $2 million.
Yeah.
That's risk I shouldn't have done, and I won't do now. Like as soon as I just redid that lease, the commission to the broker was $250,000. But I was fortunate enough that I was leveraged appropriately. Mm-hmm. I was capital intensive at that time, so I was okay.
Yeah.
But still, it's scary. I would not my biggest deal is smaller deals.
Are you all right? So you like smaller deals with more tenants?
Yeah, I like my in 2021 we did several deals where it was say a $3 to $5 million strip mall, but I have a lot of developers in my town are good friends of mine, and I'm trying to acquire their assets. So in my small community, we have 385,000 people, like I said, it's not huge, but a lot of developers, what do developers want to do, right? They want to make a bunch of money. They want a bunch of cash.
They want cash. They want they buy and sell, or build and sell.
Build and sell. So I went to several developers and I said, here's the deal. I don't want to make money. Yes, do we want to make money? But I want to create wealth. I'm not looking to make $1 million. You want to make $1 million? No problem, you got it. Done deal. Pick your number wherever we're both comfortable. I want cash flow and wealth and assets. That's what I want. $1 million today sounds sexy, but usually a lot of those guys spend it or they have to give half to the government or whatever. So it's a win-win. So like a lot of my deals I did was, say a $3, $4, $5 million strip mall. I buy it half empty. The developer builds its brand new, shiny, sexy, like say a FedEx and an Atletico. They're beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. And some other just amazing deals, like say Starbucks.
So you let the developer go.
He does all the work.
Find the land, build the building. Do they do the lease up?
They do 50%. So what I like to buy,
and then you come in, and truly the fastest way to get into cash flow is just buy into cash flow, not to build it for the next 2 years.
I don't want to do that.
And then get it or have those holding costs, or there's a lot of.
And the capital that ties up.
Yeah, it ties up a lot of capital. You need a lot of carrying costs. You need great financing terms.
You got to do work.
It's a lot more work, which is why those developers make a big pop when they sell.
Right.
But they have to sell, and it provides actually a great opportunity for you to come in and buy it stabilized.
So like one asset I bought was on Utica Ridge Road in my town. It's a very prominent town. Brand new building. They got it. So my deal that I'd like to do is say, like this deal was about $3 million. Now it was only 50%. So the bank requires obviously a larger down payment. So I put $1 million cash into the deal. So I write a check for $1 million. And on that deal, zero cash flow. Zero return. I put up $1 million, I get nothing. But I got a beautiful building, it pays all the bills, and it's half empty. And in 60 days, 90 days or so, I got very fortunate on that one. It doesn't normally happen that quick. But boom, I'm at 100%. And that tiny little deal now, I refinance it. I take my $1 million in cash, so I got nothing into the property, and I make $8,000 a month on that property. And I still have $1 million plus in equity. So I put my $1 million in, I take it back, go do that somewhere else. I still got my $1 million plus in equity. I got my $8,000 a month on cash flow. I got my $200,000 a year on debt reduction, and then hopefully it goes up in value.
Dude, and we were talking about this last night. Is like everybody thinks that like I want to get into these larger commercial assets because of the cash flow. I'm gonna get rich from the cash flow. The cash flow is good, right? Like that's nice. It's something to live off of. But what they don't realize is the wealth is created because of the principal reduction. Because you pay the mortgage payment 100%. Every single month, and it is a forced savings, right?
That's what we talked about last night.
We talked about
forced savings.
You're gonna go buy cars. I'm gonna go on vacations. I'm gonna like. It forces you to just slam down principal on the balance, on the loan balance, and then the property naturally appreciates. Rents naturally bump up. You put a 10-year lease term in place.
3% bumps every year.
3-4% bumps every single year, so you know it's going to keep on increasing in value. And you have steady fixed debt on the property, so you know that your expenses are going to stay predictable, right? And so like, everybody focuses on the cash flow. The reality is the principal pay down and the debt reduction is where all the wealth is built. And the longer you can hold on to these properties, the more you're paying down the principal, the more it's appreciating over time, and then more equity that's built up,
Yeah, as we talked about last night, like my debt reduction is substantial. All of my loans are in 20-year amortization. Some of them are 15. So my debt reduction is almost $200,000 a month. Now, I can't touch it. I can't feel it. I can't spend it. I don't get to enjoy it. Only money I get to enjoy is my cash flow. But in commercial, unlike apartments, like I was talking to my bank guy today, he does all of my leases, all of my ins and out, every dollar in, every dollar out. I mean, I don't spend unless he approves it pretty much. So like he told me today, he was like, hey, just so you know, your February income, your income's gonna drop by about $36,000 a month. I said, okay, great, no problem. That's not a big deal. I can absorb that. But
why?
Because I had some leases come up and 2 of them aren't renewing, and some of them will take 3 or 4 months to renew. So my income will drop by $36,000 a month.
So, but when it takes 3 or 4 months to renew,
we've been doing the process.
They're still paying on a month-to-month kind of a lease, though, right?
Well, well, it depends on each deal. Yes, they'll go into a month-to-month, or we'll get a new tenant going in there. Like one of the deals is, hey, you got to put up $500,000 on this build out. Okay, well, we'll go to the bank for that usually. Or a lot of times they'll want like X amount of a build out, and I'll finance it to them. I'll borrow it from the bank for 3.5%, and I'll finance it to them at 7%. Because let's say they're a little mom and pop, they don't have $250,000, and the landlord down the street, he can't give them the $250,000 maybe, but I can.
How do you underwrite
my banking relationship?
How do you underwrite these tenants? If they're a mom and pop versus
100%.
Obviously a Starbucks is easy, and
the
Five
Five Guys
Wild
and
Wings,
Buffalo Wild Wings, those are easy.
Those are easy.
Aspen
those are
Dental
Class A,
and,
right? But like,
Qdoba.
how are you underwriting and qualifying some of the smaller?
That's a
tenants?
valid question. So
and does the bank step in and say, we want to underwrite them?
Well, I'm at the level now the bank doesn't step in at the tenants at all because of my guy that does my financing. He's got the bank lens, he's got the underwriting lens. So we sit down and go through the financials. Like we have tenants all the time like, hey, we want to rent this, will you fund this? Now what I like to see is, say it's a simple number, $100,000 build out. I would like to see the tenant put up $50,000, then I'll put up $50,000. But even on the lease, usually if they're gonna scratch a check in excess of $50,000, they got some financial wherewithal. But we do have to review, it's not so much their credit score, I mean, that's a part of it, but it's really what are your financial liabilities and what are your assets. So we dive into that. Like we've passed on tenants. We were like, hey, you a rock star. We will fund the whole damn thing.
And that's based on what if they don't have another location right now and they can't show you a profit and loss statement?
Then that's usually not my tenant.
That's not your tenant.
That's not me.
It's
But now,
always somebody who
beginning
has
days-
success somewhere else.
Yeah, mine are not anymore. Like
And they're
nail
looking-
salons. Nail salons can hurt you.
And so
my
they're
younger
looking for
days would grab them.
Yeah, right. That was like my early days. Anybody
Yeah.
who had first month rent and
Yeah,
deposit,
right?
you're in. Get over here. Right? I didn't ask about what second month
What's
rent
your
ever.
credit report and all that?
So what is it?
History.
What does it look like? So you're always finding somebody who has a location and they're looking to open up a second location or fifth location or 10th location.
Well, and that evolves over time. Like I'm buying at say cap rates at 6, 7, 8, 6 and 7 mainly, but
Yep.
that's over time. Like when I first got into commercial, it was those smaller tenants. It was those nail salons. It was those small little mom and pop restaurants. But a lot of them did go out, and so in the last 2 years, I haven't focused on any of those at all. But at your beginning stages, you will have to, because the commercial end is such a different beast. You got to be able to absorb, say, a $5,000 tenant just going elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, your income has got to be enough to be able to balance those out.
So let's talk about underwriting tenants a little bit more.
Okay.
If I underwrite a tenant on the residential side in an apartment building, they essentially need to have a take-home income of at least 3 times the monthly
times.
rental rate.
That's what we do.
A credit score that just doesn't have any sort of like delinquencies or if they're not paying their cell phone bill, they're not paying rent, right? So we want to make sure that's in place. Their credit check, their background check, they need to make sure that there's no violent crimes on their background check. And then no eviction history, right? And so like that's what I look for in a residential tenant. What are you looking for specifically in a commercial tenant?
When we do the leases on the commercial, it's about the same as what you do there. The only thing that's a little bit more
So they need to
different
be
is
able
how
to-
much is liquidity they have. Can you cover 6 months worth of rent?
Got it.
Can you cover a year's worth of rent? What is your business plan? On the small little mom and pops, we do get a little involved. Now I'm in a small community, so a lot of times I'll know them. Now I'm getting tenants calling all the time. We want to open a second location. Would you build a building or will you buy this building? But it's similar. It's very similar, just more zeros.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, honestly, I mean, I hate this, it probably sounds cliche too, is when you sit face to face.
Yeah.
Like I did a deal with a nail salon and I'm like, these financials don't work. So I called my guy and I said, set up a meeting. I'm going to sit with them for an hour. And I just want to listen. I don't talk a lot. I just listen to what they're planning. And I got done and I'm like, give them whatever they want. Let's figure it out. And they've been my tenant now for about 8 years.
Wow.
And it's a little nail salon. They didn't have a bunch of money, but like now they just bought $50,000 in, chairs. And they funded all of that, and their rent's like clockwork. Like this is their passion.
Yeah.
Now, if I get a guy, a lot of times he's like, I got 6 locations, I want another couple, and I'm spread all over. And he's got a big deal and a big ego. Sometimes that doesn't work. So every deal is a case by case. But my favorite deals are like the higher end.
Yeah.
Like my Buffalo Wild Wings is $2.8 billion in revenue. I have their financial statement.
Yep.
All these big deals. Like I like those. Those triple net deals are nice. They're usually 5 or 10 year leases with 2 or 3 5-year options. So I'm locked in. The bank's locked in. Everybody loves the transaction. But every little deal's different. Like I have some office spaces that, like you said, the first month's rent, last month's rent. I got a couple that are not sexy and not big money rent. So I'm like, if I get a qualified guy and I can do a face to face. And not a ton, but you get some credibility when you sit and chat with somebody.
Yeah, no,
and you can
totally.
tell if they're transparent and honest.
So, all right, let's talk about what do you do when, all right, so you find, you're mitigating risk a couple different ways, right? So you're mitigating risk in, you're buying from developers that already have it 50% leased up. You're going to come in, market the heck out of the other 50%. Because it's new, it's very attractive to quality tenants. You could typically fill that up pretty quickly. That's a way that you mitigate risk. How are you signing leases and mitigating the risk of hyperinflation occurring as we've seen wages go up now, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're renting to a Buffalo Wild Wings, guess what? Like, dude, the barista over here who made this coffee is making $22 an hour now, where they used to be making, I don't know, $14 an hour, right?
Yeah.
And that happened in the past 12 months.
Totally.
What about, a Taco Bell is hiring people for $18 an hour starting wage. So like, when you see that happening, are you looking at the underwriting and looking at their financials a little bit different way, seeing how much they have in wages and how much they have in overhead and like factoring that in?
Now those, I don't get involved in any of that. No, I'm just
What
getting their
about-
financial statement.
Yep.
What liquidity did they have? What volume did they do? And it's just really a credibility. I'm looking at it all from the underwriter's view of the bank.
Yeah.
The bank has like these document and these guidelines. Like in commercial real estate, you can do, like I got my real estate license, but you can also do your CCIM courses.
Yep.
That helps you underwrite deals. But we don't dive into what their payroll is and all that. Here's the credibility to cover the rent, and your expenses are kind of on you.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, with Buffalo Wild Wings, we got into a deal, my first Buffalo Wild Wings, where they said, hey, we're going to come in and we'll rent, but we're going to pay you a percentage of sales. And that worked out okay. Now, the world's different, I know. This was years ago.
Yep.
We'll pay you a percentage of sales.
Yep.
Now, like a couple of new restaurants,
So
I've
that way
done that.
they have a little bit lower
Right.
of a rental rate, but then
But
you're
when they
in
start
the
killing
upside.
it, yeah, I'm in the up and the down.
And the downside,
Now,
right.
I've done that with like the mom and pop restaurants, or like I have like some coffee shops and beautiful restaurants. But a lot of times too, what I have, and you're gonna laugh about this, like I have these beautiful brand new restaurants where like one I have that they put $1 million of the build out in. They put all the cash in. The developer built it. The other is a coffee. They put all the cash in, put $1 million here, $1 million there. I buy the building for $3.5 million. I put my $1 million in cash flow, so there's no upside. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But here's my deal on that. The net worth of the coffee place, I mean, she's tens of millions.
Yeah.
And the others is 5 doctors. They just wanted to have their fancy restaurant. It's a beautiful location, but they can say that's theirs, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And their rent's, a lot of money. But I don't have to worry about it because a lot of these restaurants are like, how to partner and do all that I haven't learned. But they're 4 or 5 doctors and lawyers that just want to throw their money out. I never have to worry about the rent with those.
So how are you factoring in rents? Because I mean, you're saying, hey, we bump rents by 3% every single year.
Well, every deal varies.
Right.
but-
So how are you signing a long-term lease with all the crazy chaoticness and
Yeah.
tailspins that's happening with the economy right now, and with the financial sector of, a lot of inflation that's hitting these businesses and hitting potentially you, right?
Yeah.
I guess you're passing along some of it to the
I'm
tenants.
passing most of those costs up to the tenant because I'm doing usually 5-year leases with 3 5-year options. So I'm trying to schedule out 20 years.
But those options, those don't have set prices in them, do they?
Those don't. It's just usually my first
first
my
5
first
years,
lease, and then
3%
the
bumps
second.
every year.
Yeah. So it's real slow and boring, but it maintains where I get my cash flow that I'm looking for. And like on the commercial, if the taxes go up, the snow, the lawn, if I need a new parking lot, HVAC, roofs, all that they cover. So it's kind of, some buildings I cover the roofs.
Yeah.
But I was telling you at dinner last
kinda
night,
depends.
every deal's a little bit different.
Yep.
Every deal, honestly, every strip mall is an analyzation, and then every single tenant is an analyzation.
Well, it's nice, dude, because the taxes, if they go up, it's on the
Yeah.
tenant. Insurance, that goes up, it's on the tenant.
Yeah, all that doesn't
Utilities, if that goes up, it's on the tenant. Maintenance, management,
Everything.
all that stuff is on the tenant. So really, you just need to make sure that your rental rate
Keeps up.
is in excess of what your debt service is.
Exactly. And the big thing too, big thing I've learned is look at the parking lots and the roofs. Those are the big things I learned from apartments. Now, when I look at buying a building, like I'm negotiating in a couple of buildings right now, one's another Buffalo Wild Wings, but if the parking lot or the roof need replaced, is that in the lease that the tenant pays it or the landlord pays it?
Mm-hmm.
So now that's the boring part of the job that I don't do anymore, but my team
that's
does.
an easy conversation to have.
But reading through the lease,
understand, yeah.
who covers it?
Yeah.
Now, like HVAC, like I have a medical building that we spent $200,000 on HVAC last year.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great because I'm improving my building. But here's the downfall on that. Like I may spend $30,000 one month, and I front all that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we do the CAM reconciliation 7 months from now, they pay me all back.
Got it.
So commercial with CAM, common area maintenance charges,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you're fronting a lot of this capital, like a lot, but you get it back,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the year. And there's a spread on that you're not covering too much, but I would say
So
for
do you
people,
do you set a reserve aside from
every
that?
property we have is a reserve account.
All right. Does the bank require that, or that's just something that you started doing because of your experience?
I did that because of my experience. Because at the beginning I didn't know.
So the bank's not requiring it though.
No.
So if something popped up and you didn't have a reserve, what would you do? Would you go and try to get a second
Right,
loan
you
on
could
the
get a
property,
line
or
of
credit,
credit, or maybe a second mortgage because I am putting 25 or 30% down on every deal.
Yeah.
But like right now, I have my property account, your operating account, your tax account, your insurance account, and then a reserve account on most of my buildings. There's a lot of times that we were talking about how much cash reserves.
Yeah.
I'm holding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands sometimes of reserve accounts but I still really can't touch it or look at it. No new toys, no lifestyle. That's for those properties. So that gives me the warm and fuzzy feeling, but it also does the bank. Like now when I close a deal, what I've been offering to my banks is I'll say, hey, why don't we do this? We'll front the taxes, and I'll throw 3 months of principal and interest payments, taxes and insurance, 3 months of those payments just in a reserve account in your bank. And then I forget it's there, and you forget it's there.
Yep.
But you guys are warm, and sometimes, honestly, they'll let the origination fee go away, or instead of 3.2%, they'll give me for 3.1 or whatever it is. If it's a little benefit, because I'm into the long-term effect of all this, because I'm obviously trying to create some massive wealth, and I'm not looking for huge income. We're all looking for income, but it's a balancing act.
Yeah, man. I think it's very fascinating. That whole space. I look at it from perspective of, Amazon's in business to take retail out of brick and mortar, right, and take it all online. So that spooks me a little bit with the retail stuff. But
I get it.
There's definitely barbershops and restaurants and things of that sort that people are still going to and will always need to go to, right? Yeah, exactly.
medical office space.
And then
I love medical.
You're looking at office and you see all the COVID and everybody working from home or working remotely. So like that really, really gets you looking sideways, and then I just think there's always an obstacle and there's always an opportunity, right? So like there's always
you
upside.
Either see one or the other.
Yeah. And
I see the opportunity as like I love commercial, but exactly I would recommend if you're not an 8-figure guy, do apartments. But now I've got a solid base of commercial. I mean, I bought 100 apartments this year, but that's it. I bought 38 townhomes. Those were different. Those were beautiful. Two in my town, a couple thousand a month. They're John Deere executives renting them. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. So I want to get into more apartments because.
Why?
Just because I want the balance. I want a little bit of a balance. Like right now, I have commercial office space, I have medical space, I have retail, I have regular office, I have farm ground. So what I want to add is.
Are you cash flowing the farm?
No.
No. It's just land, right?
See, the reason I did that is the bank loves it. The bank loves for you to be diversified, which I'm not a diversification guy. I mean, It's like I'm throwing into mutual funds, but I want to sleep good at night.
Well, you got 35 different buildings in different towns and different tenants.
Yeah.
Like there's diversification in that.
Farm ground is not sexy.
Right.
It's not sexy.
So why do you think buying apartment buildings will help diversify more?
Well, I have the experience in apartments, and I think I could do a lot of the value add. Like my big deal in the 100 units I bought was it was an income restricted. So it could max out. Like they told me, and the owner was a good friend of mine, and they told me, they're like, hey, the rent is this, but I turn away 80% because they make too much money. This is a good part of town. It's only 100 units. Their rent is capped at this, but here's the thing. That owner got like a 2% loan because the income restriction, and he got like a 30-year mortgage or whatever, and I did 20. But the day that deed was cleaned up and done and paid in full, I close, I have no more income restriction. So my benefit on that deal is, boom, I can go from say $600 a month in rents to $800 a month in no time. Now I'm kicking out.
And why is that the case?
That situation, it was an income restricted property.
Right.
He got like no money down, 2% financing.
No, but once his financing's paid off, then you can do
Zero,
whatever
I
you
can do whatever I want.
Got it.
So I buy the 100 units. It's worth, the day I bought it, I paid $6 million, put $1.5 million down. So I'm going to raise that value to probably $8 million in 24 months or so. I'll get my $1.5 million back and do it again. Yeah. Now I see more opportunity in the apartments because I can do more of those. That value. Now this property that I bought is half a mile up. We got a huge Amazon building in our town. Amazon now is headquartered in our town, so that's kind of cool. And 1,000 jobs overnight. So that property is now. Can I do that with a commercial strip mall? Not normally. I can't buy a $6 million strip mall and say 18 months make it worth $8 million. So I got to get back into that. I need some things to do. I have a commercial property. It's all triple net. They usually wire transfer all the money.
Well, I think that's
easy.
I think that's a really powerful thing to bring up because we were talking just now. You own $90 million of property and you don't have a team. There's nobody.
Yeah.
Like everybody's third party.
Right.
You don't have payroll. It's you, right? But you have great third party resources and vendors and people that you work with, like your banker and your CFO and your CPA and all these other folks.
Yeah, I only have 5 key people.
Right.
and none of them are on payroll. They get paid as a deal closes or rent comes in.
Right.
But think of like, say, a Whole Foods. You know, they wire transfer the money on the first.
Yep.
You never talk to them.
Yep.
If there's anything needs done, it just gets done. They do it usually.
So you're doing the reconciliation, making sure rents come in, because you don't have third-party management in place, do you?
No, I don't do any of that. I couldn't do that. I stay in my lane.
You have third-party management in place
So
now?
there's a property management company in my town. They manage every building I have.
Good.
So they collect all the rents. They send me every month what we brought in, what we spent, every penny.
Yep.
My girl's named Deanna, and she's amazing. She
Yep.
runs everything. She came from Texas and worked for a billionaire down there, all commercial real estate. And every penny in and out, including the apartments, is all ran through Rule Company. So I have no involvement.
Yep.
So, I can do my entire business on maybe 10 emails, 5 to 10 emails a day.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing a lot of this more too, because we could do a show on how many mistakes I made. I managed myself, I hired my buddies, or I did this, and I wasn't as efficient as these guys. Like banking, I used to go to a bank and get a loan. I couldn't tell you the banks I own the money to. I own probably 12 to 14 banks or so, but he handles it and Rule handles it. They do all of that. All the payments are automatically withdrawn. It's pretty simple. But that didn't happen overnight. So it is, I only have 4 or 5 people I deal with. Now, the car washes that I bought this year, I have one general manager. That's the only person I talk to. And he has about 15 employees. But I couldn't tell you their names.
Do you find it difficult to learn each new business and the technicalities of each of those businesses? Like a car wash, right? Like, hey, there's going to be additional, environmental protection laws in place.
There's a whole bunch.
Yeah, and then you need a staff, and then you need all these different things, because you're not just buying real estate.
Now that one was different.
You're buying a business and the real estate.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I did that for tax reasons, because as you and I were talking about, I got a very large tax bill several years ago, and that, oh boy, I got to learn some stuff. So I needed to start buying some assets that I could take all the depreciation in the first year. That was the big reason I bought it. But then I studied up. I have enough free time. I really studied up on Shaq. Shaq has 174 car washes just like mine. And I bought them. I spent $8.5 million. And if I can raise the revenue, mine are all prepaid passes, so there's not real cash. It's a tunnel car wash. We make good money, but we also are paying down, all the mechanicals are on a 10-year mortgage. The land and the buildings are on a
You can depreciate a lot more of it faster,
Yeah,
right?
I'm depreciating, but I'm also paying it down aggressively.
Yeah.
But the cash flow is nice. But to be honest, I'm trying to learn more industries. If I had, say, a couple of $100 million in commercial, a couple of $100 million in apartments, a couple of $100 million in farm ground, it'd be a nice balance.
Do you think it's more important to go wide across? I mean, it sounds like you really want to diversify and go wide across many different asset classes.
I do.
Instead of going deep and being an expert at one.
I really do, because I feel that's more comfortable for me, because I love the apartments, they're fun. But man, I sat in a board meeting last Friday with my attorney, my CFO, my broker, my real estate agent, and we're negotiating with University of Iowa. And I'm going to put $1 million into the building, and they're going to put $1 million in the building. That's kind of fun. There's so many angles. I am such a novice. My team is way smart. I just kind of listen, but they're so smart. But I'm going to take a building, say we're $7 million, to almost say $10 million in a blink of an eye. Now that is exciting to me too. So
Yep.
the value add on the apartments is great, but also the commercial. And I love working with the local restaurants and the local, whatever it may be, like FedEx. You want to negotiate a lease with FedEx, it's kind of cool. You've done it, so you know it. So I'm literally liking all avenues.
Yeah.
Like I talked to you, I want to do
mobile
home parks.
So it's more
storage.
of a there's a diversification play, but it's really keeping you engaged also,
Right.
right? You're an entrepreneur.
It gives me some excitement.
When things get boring, we
Right.
look for something else to do.
I
right?
need some sexiness.
Yeah, if you're so good at something, it gets a little bit
Right.
boring. I mean, that's kind of why I got into buying the island, buying
Right.
some of these
Exactly.
unique,
You need something that gets you your,
it's
your
it's
goosebumps.
still real estate, but you can still automate it, use some of your same processes, procedures, structuring, financing side of things, and then it gives you something a little bit new to do and a little bit more exciting.
And it's also great that I'm learning, it's the education process.
Mm-hmm.
I have a $90 million portfolio, but there's so much I don't know. There's guys in my town, the 9-figure guys, they have more knowledge in their pinky, and sometimes they talk at a level I can't get there quick enough. Let's say, I read a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've read it 24 times or whatever. I have to read it 3 or 4 times. Sometimes I have to go have coffee with these guys and go, okay, that's great. That's smart. I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that angle. But they've done, so many deals. So not that apartments don't get sexy to me or boring to me, but sometimes I just want a little bit of both. And now I'm going into apartments that I really want, like nice new stuff.
Yep.
I really want new. 90% of my portfolio is Class A, best part of town.
I like that. And that's kind of like.
But it's a lower return.
But I think you go through phases of starting out in the war zones, right? Like you did, like I did, and then all of a sudden you're getting into bigger properties, getting into nicer areas of properties, and like where we are right now is I just want Class A built the past 20 years or newer, B plus, A minus, still workforce is kind of what I'm looking for, but there's value add to bump some rents.
Not the 400,000 per unit.
Nah, it's not really my vibe.
Not my gig.
But 100,000 to 150 is kind of like
and
per
I've been
door.
there.
It's kind of where I'm looking at right now.
For sure. If you had all A plus stuff takes a turn, you were in a bad spot.
Yeah, all those luxury renters moving to more of a workforce housing.
I love the blue collar and the white collar. I love a little bit of both. But I also have to understand my limits. Like I invested in Des Moines, Iowa, and it's only 2 hours from my town. I bought a $3.5 million strip mall, put in $1 million. And for 3 years, I got zero cash flow. You know why? My management out there, I wasn't a big enough fish in that pond. There was too much cash rolling around that town. And I didn't swing a big enough bat to get some of those tenants. That was a lot of mom and pops. Like that deal was too many tenants, a bunch of 1,500 square foot tenants. Now I learned that the hard way. I don't want to do that. I had another strip mall I had $1 million tied up on. And it was too much, wishy-washy. So now I'm trying to dial it in, but it's taken years. I mean, it's slow and boring.
I think one of the things that you had mentioned a couple times in this is your ability to create relationships and talk to, build a great team, talk to some of the players in town, and get deal flow off market through brokers and other sellers and other business owners and entrepreneurs and all that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit more about how you've developed those relationships, who you're reaching out to, what are you saying to them, and how are you sitting down with these 9-figure folks in your town?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. So here's the situation. You and I both have a lot of younger entrepreneurs that want to come and talk to us. But we also realize our time is very valuable, and we have a lot of knowledge. Like you had a great thing when you said, I want to pick your brain. I don't want my brain picked.
Yeah.
Valid.
Sounds gross, right?
Yeah. So now I think like, all right, if you want to talk business, let's talk, but I want you to invest in yourself, like the younger thing, right? So when I want to talk to a wealthy guy, I want to know a little bit about what he's doing. Hey, congrats on what you just did. I don't care if it's buying a new Escalade, building a new home, buying a new home, or like one of the guys in town loves to go fishing. I do a little homework, ask around. And then like there's one group of guys, they're all 9-figure guys. They have coffee, every day at 7 a.m. And I sometimes just say, hey, can I pop in and just listen to you guys talk? And they're like, yeah, he's a single guy, bachelor life. They like to hear my stories, so I like to give more than I take. But over time, you do build relationships, but that's taken years. But it's also taken some successes that they know I've done, and they know I'm actually a player in the game. But I wasn't. But yeah, at the beginning, you got to build those relationships. And you made a great comment at dinner last night. You're doing a lot of deposits. Mm-hmm. That was like these relationships, like one goes back 14 years. We went to a Cubs game because the bank set it up. Mm-hmm. And we went to a Cubs game and had cocktails, had a good time. Took my limo up and back, and it was just a great time. But you got to know those. Those are deposits now for a decade. That honestly, I hate to admit it, and don't get scared if you're a newer investor, but a lot of my relationships I've been working on for a decade plus. Mm-hmm. I am in a little community, but we all kind of know each other.
But like long-term mentality.
Like the quick $1 million in income, or like I flipped houses. We flipped 1,000 houses. That's a lot of money real fast, but it's not massive wealth growth. Mm-hmm. And what I found with that is the problem was we're making so much money so fast, you tend to spend it so fast too. Commercial real estate, it's slow and boring. Yep. You could say a building pays me $10,000 a month. It's not like next month it's going to pay me 30. Yep. It's not going to go like that. It's just real slow and consistency.
Love it, man.
So it's a nice balance. But that's why I'm looking for more apartments. That's why when you said you'd grab dinner, I booked a flight and flew down here because I want more.
So what does the next 12 months look like?
12 months. Well, I set a goal in January of 2021 to buy $52 million, because I took that from Wolf of Wall Street when he did not make it, but he's like, I was $3 million short of making $52 million last year. I was like, I wanted to buy $52 million. Now I didn't hit my goal, but I got darn close. So now my goal is obviously larger for 2022, but I've got, several transactions that I'm negotiating on now. Currently I'm negotiating on about 25 million in assets. And I got some massive goals for 2022.
That's great.
But a little bit of everything, commercial, office, retail, industrial, maybe, storage units you're talking about, maybe a mobile home park. I don't know.
Yep.
Maybe not the mobile home. Either way. But apartments I want to. I mean, some good apartments. Like there's this property, a block from my house that's about a $12 million acquisition for 80 some apartments. And I will pay it. And I will give the guy what he wants. And I'll make it a win-win. That's the other benefit I have is 95% of all of my assets are within 5 miles of my driveway. So like on a Sunday morning, I can drive by all 90 million of it in under an hour. So I kind of like that feeling because I'm not in my town a lot. So when I do get back, I try to do that.
Yeah.
So that's beneficial and I like that.
Love it, man.
But just growth, exponential growth. Like you got me in with social media. I didn't like social media a year and a half ago. And that's all new. I need to commit to that a little bit. And my big thing for 2022 is if it's scary or makes me uncomfortable, I want to run to it. Like eventually we got to have that conversation about doing partnerships or raising capital. Like when you talk about that, you're talking in another language. It's like you're speaking French.
And to me, it's second nature,
right? Like commercial leases are second
using
nature.
my own money for deals is like what? That's mind-boggling.
Right. When I talked to my CFO before we did this, he's like, you got over $100,000 going out this month in earnest money on these deals I'm working on.
Yeah.
We cut checks yesterday for $25,000, another one today for $25,000.
Yep.
But in January, I'll give out $100,000 in just earnest money. That's no return. It just lessens my down payment down the road, but it's still something in our cash flow. People think, oh, they make millions of dollars. Yes, we do, but we don't get to enjoy all of that.
Yeah.
We're reinvesting usually 80% of our
That's
capital.
a great point.
Reinvest all of your capital, not all, but 80%. I try to live on 20% of what I make.
Yep.
Because I'm constantly getting these things. Like sometimes I'll buy a strip mall and the tenant needs a build out. I may have to front $100,000. But thank you God, my cash flow is strong enough. I can fund that.
Yeah, I think, and especially if somebody's bringing on private capital, the key is like you got to fund the reserves. You got to have money set aside, let it sit there, or have the ability to go out and raise more capital in the future, give up a little bit of equity to some private money investors, and allow them to get involved in the deal in the future, because we're not talking about small dollar amounts. These are big 6-figure, sometimes even seven-figure
sometimes
dollar amounts.
Yeah,
so
and you don't want to get in that corner.
Let's wrap with this. Where do you see the market going over the next 12 to 24 months, right? The Fed's just announced, well, first of all, they said there's not going to be any rate hikes, maybe one until the end of 2022.
Yep.
That changed last month, was saying there's going to be at least 3 rate hikes, and now they're talking about potentially 7 to 8 rate hikes this year.
Yeah, and my thoughts are, I think the market's going to continue. I think are we at the top? It could go even further, I think.
Well, I mean, you've been investing since 2003, so what are you seeing?
I've seen it all.
Parallels and
but here's my deal on
differences?
this. Like, if I'm borrowing at 3.5% and the cap rate's 6.5%, I'm okay.
And the tenants are locked in.
Right,
for
but if
5
I'm
years.
borrowing, like everybody's like, oh my God, if interest rates go up. Most of my deals are locked for 5, 7, and 10-year interest rates. So I'm comfortable. My 90 million is pretty solid. I'm very comfortable. Let's say rates go to 5%. That's not really going to hurt me. Most of my stuff's in.
Because all your stuff's fixed and it's not variable.
Right, but the new deal, let's say if I'm going to borrow at 5, my cap rate better go back to the 10s. You remember buying deals at 10 cap, 9 cap, 11 cap. Those were fun. So I think the interest rates are definitely going to go for it. So I'm planning on it. And then there's just going to be more and more opportunities because a lot of these wealthy guys are going to be like, oh, I'm just going to go all cash. I'm going to go all cash. All this up and down stuff I don't want to deal with.
I bet they're getting paranoid of hey, as interest rates go up, cap rates go up, which means values come down. So they're like, I need to go and unload some of this stuff right now before all these rate hikes occur.
Right, and I was fortunate in 2021 because a lot of those guys were thinking like that. They're like, let's just retire or relax, but just we need a lot of millions in the bank. And I'm like, I don't need millions in the bank. I need my reserve accounts, but I need to be acquiring assets, the cash flow. So I just want to grow cash flow and grow my equity position. But like a good friend of mine a long time ago said, always maintain, say, 35% equity, which I know you do more, but somewhere in that area where like if our property drops, if my properties drop, from 90 million to 80 million, what do I care? I'm not selling anything. Don't matter to me. I'm in the long game.
Yeah, the paper
Yeah,
money
is paper.
isn't worth anything. It's like, what does the cash flow look like? What does your fixed expenses look like? And the reality is, even if taxes, insurance, and all that stuff gets bumped up, that's all triple net, and it's
for me
passed
that's
on to
warm
the
and fuzzy. I
tenants
don't really matter.
Right.
Because in our area we were talking too. We're 2 and 3% of property in just taxes. My property taxes are close to $2 million a year.
Yeah, it's insane.
So that's a big chunk. But that's where you got to balance all of that. So, but I'm beneficial with triple net. But I still want to add some apartments. It's good to have that. I mean, apartments are nice.
Yeah, I think you got to be in.
It's harder to raise a Buffalo Wild Wings rent as opposed to Joe Bob.
Yep.
So
no, I like it, man. I think it's. I've owned some office. I've owned some. Warehouse. I've owned some mixed use with retail on the ground floor and apartments above it. And there's definitely some benefits, but you got to be able to stomach whenever one of those retail spaces goes vacant.
Yeah, most
and
people.
As long as you have the reserves and you're okay with that and you can stomach it for 6, 12, 18 months.
Right.
I never had that deep of pockets to be able to do that, so I never really pursued that, and that's why I stuck with apartments. It was easier to manage. It was easier for my team to wrap their head around.
Have you considered any commercial?
Yeah, absolutely. So
maybe we buy a deal this year.
I would absolutely. I would look at a triple net lease deal with an A-class tenant with a long-term lease and
me too.
Put the money down and let it be a little bond that pays you for the next 10 years.
Slow and
slam
boring.
down principal, appreciate over time.
It's nice.
No, I think there's definitely a lot of
easy.
benefits
It's
to that.
nice to have a balance. Like I need to add some apartments. I think you'd have some fun having some, triple net, Class A, Whole Foods or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Five Guys are great. Whatever that may be, it's nice to have the portfolio. It's mixed up a little bit.
I will say that some people that I've known who have scaled fastest were in that retail space, in the triple net space, where they've scaled and gone and picked up
feel good.
hundreds of millions of dollars a year in property.
See if I could figure out that caveat that you know how to do.
Well, it's all
I run out of
syndication,
money,
dude.
I run out of
you
money.
You gotta stop using your own money. Like, what's beautiful is you control it, you own it, you got all the upside, but you also have all the downside, and you also have 100% of the responsibility falling on your shoulders. And so when you syndicate, dude, if you want to grow, you have to bring on outside investors, dude. That's how Bezos grew, right? He owns 11% of Amazon. Right? And he's the richest man, or second richest man in the world. Musk only owns 22% of Tesla because he had to bring on outside capital. But guess what?
You gotta teach
he's the
me.
wealthiest person in the world. So if you're okay bringing on those outside investors, and the reality is, dude.
And I am. As soon as I hit my 100 million.
You're looking at it from a standpoint of risky, to them, and what if you lose money? What about the benefit to them? All the upside, right? You're talking about all this money that you made and all the principal pay down and all the value appreciation that you've seen over the past however many years. Dude, it gives other people an opportunity to get involved in that. You're doing them a favor because it's a way better investment than to go put it in the stock market or something more speculative, So it's like, I feel an obligation to take our opportunities to our investors, let them invest in our projects. And are they doing me a favor? Well, kind of, but I'm also doing them a favor.
You kind of are. You said that last night.
Like
I didn't
we're able
get
to
that
work
until you said it.
together on building wealth together versus like them doing me a favor or me doing them a favor. No, it's collaborative,
And the other thing that I would love to be a part of that is the thing that I don't have is like these conversations. I'm all me. I'm on an island by myself, I don't get
why
to
you're in the
sit
mastermind, bro.
Obviously, I think yours should be way more priced. People are getting massive value.
Appreciate
Biggest takeaway is go to Tim's mastermind. But like the conversation back and forth, like we were talking about mobile home or storage or whatever it may be, or raising capital. That's a new game that I got to learn.
Yeah.
And I've just done it. You have grown so fast. I grew last year. In 1 year, I bought more assets than I did in the first 17 years. It took me 17 years to buy, say, 47 million in assets. I bought 47 million just last year.
Yep.
That's
crazy. We talked about this last night at dinner. Everybody thinks success is like a step ladder, right?
Overnight.
And it's just steady, and you a little bit grow, and it's like a 45-degree angle. That's not what success is. What it really looks like for entrepreneurs like us is no success,
Yeah.
and then a straight shot up. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden you get this compound effect that just snowballs over and over and over, and you double your portfolio every single year. But guess what? There's 17 years for you, or there
Yeah.
was about 7 or 8 years for me before I actually hit this curve where it started going like a rocket ship, man. It started going up. So
That's what I feel like
I
now.
think that's
The
a-
momentum is key.
Yeah.
Momentum is,
Big time.
mindset's key, but momentum and those successes that give you the confidence, it just is that great feeling.
I love it, man. Well, dude, I'm proud of you. I'm excited
you.
for everything that you
Cool.
got going on.
Thanks for having me on.
You had an awesome year. I'm excited to see what you do this year. So appreciate
See
you being
what
here,
you do.
brother.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right, great information from Andy. I love that there's a different perspective, right? Like there's so many different ways to make money in real estate. You don't just have to be doing apartments. You don't just have to be flipping houses. You don't just have to be doing storage facilities or mobile home parks. Like there's a lot of different ways to make money, and you could focus on one of them or you could focus on many of them. Obviously, you can see that there's different strategies that Andy was able to use in using his own capital and refinancing buildings and pulling equity out, using that for down payment on other buildings, and essentially doing the Burr method on triple net lease, retail, office, strip centers, and all those kinds of things. And he's able to amass a sizable portfolio from doing that. And then there's ways that I've been able to build a portfolio, a sizable portfolio, by leveraging other people's money, allowing other investors to get involved in our projects, and building wealth and sharing some of the equity that way. So a lot of different ways, a lot of different asset classes. The concept here is don't wait to get involved in real estate. Just get involved in real estate. Start doing deals, start taking action, test out a few different ones, see what you really like, and then dive deep into whatever that asset class is. So until next time, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for sharing this video and commenting below. And until next time, be your best.